It was a regular Tuesday morning. Bills on the counter, coffee brewing, me half awake and sorting through the usual pile of junk mail. But then I saw it. One envelope that didn't look like the others. Thick paper, bold print, a bank logo I didn't recognize. I figured it was some kind of promotion, until I opened it. That's when my stomach dropped. It was about a loan. Overdue. In my name. I just stood there holding the paper like it might catch fire. I'd never applied for a loan from that bank. Never even heard of it. But there it was. My full name, my address, my social security number. All correct. And then I saw the number they claimed I owed. It was massive. My heart started racing. I remember saying out loud, "What the hell is this?" But no one was around to answer. The next morning, I walked into the branch, clutching that letter like it was a grenade. I honestly thought it had to be a mistake, a mix-up, a system glitch, something easy to fix. But the woman behind the desk? She looked at me like I was the problem. She slid a folder over and said, "This is the original loan paperwork." My eyes scanned the pages, and then I saw it. My name, scribbled in someone else's handwriting. The phone number listed, not mine, my parents'. And just like that, the room started spinning. I couldn't speak for a second. I just kept staring at that forged signature, like my brain was trying to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. My chest felt tight, like something was pressing down on it. I asked the bank manager who applied for the loan. She glanced at the documents, then calmly said, "According to our records, it was you." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it hurt. She mentioned they'd tried contacting the number on file several times. That's when it hit me. The listed number, the email address. Everything pointed back to my parents. My hands got cold. I asked if they had surveillance footage or anything to prove who actually signed the documents. She promised to check, but her face said everything. They didn't need proof. They already had what they needed. I walked out of there with a copy of the loan in one hand and 1,000 questions in my head. By the time I got to my car, my body was shaking. I sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel like it could anchor me. Who would do this to me? Who could betray me like that? My mind wanted to come up with some explanation. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe a scam. But deep down, something colder settled in. I already knew, not just who did it, but why they thought they could get away with it. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying every memory with them. Every birthday, every family dinner, every time I paid for things without question because they said they were tight on money. And now this. It wasn't just about money, it was about trust, about identity. They hadn't just stolen from me, they became me. And somehow they thought I wouldn't notice. Part of me still wanted to be wrong. I mean, who wants to believe their own parents could do something like this? But the evidence sat right there on my kitchen table, printed in black and white. My name. Their number. A forged signature that tried to mimic mine but didn't even come close. I kept asking myself, how long has this been going on? And what else don't I know? But the worst part? The silence. They hadn't said a word, no warning, no apology, not even a hint of guilt. Just a loan I didn't ask for and a mountain of debt in my name. That was the moment it truly sank in. This wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. Their decision. And I was the collateral damage. I stood outside their front door longer than I should have. My fingers hovered over the doorbell, my heart pounding like it already knew what was coming. When my mom answered, her face lit up like everything was normal, like she hadn't just set my world on fire. "Sweetheart," she smiled. I didn't smile back. I walked past her, into the living room, clutching the loan papers like they were evidence in a trial. Because they were. They both sat down like I'd come over for coffee. My dad crossed his legs, casual, like he wasn't about to hear the words identity theft come out of my mouth. I dropped the papers on the table. "What is this?" I asked, my voice already cracking. My mom looked down, then back at me. No shock, no denial. Just silence, until my dad sighed and said, You have a good job, Jade. You can handle it. Just like that. Cold. Clean. Like they were explaining why I should carry the groceries, not why they stole my name. My whole body went numb. You forged my signature, I whispered. You used my identity. My mom reached for my hand and I pulled away. That's when she said it, the sentence that broke whatever was left of the daughter in me. Your sister needed a break. A break. Like this was a vacation, like ruining my credit, my name, my peace of mind, was justified because their favorite child had a rough patch. I stared at them, trying to process what I was hearing. My parents, the people who raised me, who taught me right from wrong, had sat down, planned this out, and signed my name like it was nothing. No apology, no regret, just excuses wrapped in entitlement. And then came the final punch. My sister walked in, phone in hand, earbuds in, completely unbothered. She glanced at the scene, rolled her eyes, and muttered, "God, Jade, you're being so dramatic." That word hit harder than anything else. Dramatic. As if my outrage wasn't justified. As if this was just some overreaction to a small favor they were owed. I felt heat rise in my chest, but my voice came out cold. You all think I should just accept this? My dad stood up, arms crossed. It's done. You're not in any real danger. He actually believed that. That emotional betrayal doesn't count unless there are bruises. That trust isn't a currency worth protecting. My sister laughed. You're making such a big deal over paperwork. I looked at her like she was a stranger. And maybe she always had been. Maybe I just didn't want to see it before. They weren't sorry. Not a single one of them. They expected me to swallow it, move on, maybe even cover for them. But something in me, something old and tired and loyal, broke clean in two, and I didn't rush to pick up the pieces. I stood up. I couldn't sit there another second. The couch felt like it was swallowing me whole. My hands were trembling, not from fear, from rage. Controlled, quiet rage. The kind that simmers so deep it doesn't need shouting to make itself known. You didn't just lie, I said, voice low. You didn't just sign my name. You stole who I am. And you think I should be okay with that? No one answered. My mom looked at her hands. My dad looked at the wall, and my sister just kept scrolling through her phone. I grabbed my bag and walked toward the door. You always said family comes first, I added, stopping just before I left. Guess I finally know which family you meant. And I meant every word. They hadn't just taken money. They'd taken my history, my name, my identity, and twisted it into something convenient for them. The worst part? They weren't even ashamed. They were just annoyed I found out. When I got home, I sat in the dark for a long time, not crying, just empty. I thought about every sacrifice I'd made over the years, every time I'd shown up for them, and now I was disposable. But somewhere in that silence, something settled. A thought. A shift. If they were willing to forge my signature, what else were they capable of? That's when the fear started to turn into something else entirely. I woke up the next morning with one thing on my mind. I couldn't let this slide. Not this time. I'd spent my whole life playing the peacemaker, the fixer, the quiet one who smoothed things over. But this wasn't something I could sweep under a rug. So I did something that scared me more than I expected. I called a lawyer. Just saying the words, "I need to talk about identity theft" out loud made my voice shake. But I said it anyway. The office was quiet, clinical. I sat on the edge of the leather chair, trying not to cry as I laid out every detail: the forged signature, the false contact info, the loan, my parents. The lawyer listened carefully. He nodded slowly and then said, "You have a case." At first, I thought he meant against the bank, but then he looked me in the eye and added, "You could press criminal charges against your own family." My breath caught. I hadn't even thought that far. Not really. I left that office with a folder full of legal options and a headache that wrapped around my skull like a vice. The idea of going after my parents, of dragging all this into the light, it made my stomach turn. But I couldn't shake the thought. They had chosen to do this, chosen to use me. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, if they weren't held accountable, they'd never stop. That night, I didn't talk to anyone. I didn't post online. I didn't vent to a friend. I just sat on the floor of my living room, back against the couch, staring at the folder the lawyer gave me. Every page felt heavier than paper had any right to be. But then, out of habit, I opened my phone, and there it was. A post from my sister, smiling, carefree, standing in front of a new car. The caption, "Finally getting what I deserve." My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. I reread it 3 times. She wasn't hiding. She was bragging. It wasn't just that they did this to me. It was that they were proud of it, bold enough to parade it around like some prize they'd earned. That was my breaking point. The fear started to burn off, and in its place came focus. Cold, sharp, dangerous focus. I wasn't just going to stop this. I was going to expose it. All of it. The next day, I filed a police report. I handed over every document, every forged signature, every link to their phone numbers and bank activity. I had screenshots of texts, proof of employment, timestamps, and as I handed it all over, I didn't flinch. For the first time in weeks, I felt something that almost resembled peace. Not because it was over, but because I was finally choosing me. Filing that report didn't fix everything, but it shifted something inside me. For so long, I'd been the one they leaned on. The dependable daughter. The one who kept her mouth shut. Kept the peace. But this time, I wasn't just cleaning up after them. I was holding them accountable. And as the officer typed up my statement, I felt a strange calm settle in. Like I had stepped into a version of myself I'd buried a long time ago. The one who fought back. Over the next few days, I gathered every piece of evidence I could find. Phone records, texts, emails, even the notarized copies the bank had on file. The lawyer helped me organize everything. He said, "This is strong. Judges don't ignore a trail this clear." And for the first time, I believed it. It wasn't just a case anymore. It was a story. And it was finally being told by me, not rewritten by the people who thought they'd always control the ending. I knew the courtroom wouldn't be easy. I knew they'd try to twist things, play the family card, maybe even cry. But it didn't matter, because now I had more than documents. I had clarity, and no one was going to gaslight me out of that again. I thought I'd be nervous walking into that courtroom, but I wasn't. I wasn't angry either, not in the loud, shaking way I used to be. What I felt was colder, quieter, like something inside me had gone still just to survive all of this. My parents were already seated at the front, my sister beside them, twirling a strand of hair like we were waiting for a school recital. When they saw me, my mom gave a half smile. My dad nodded. Like we were all here for some uncomfortable but necessary family meeting. They tried it early. The sympathy card. "She's our daughter," my mom said to the judge, voice trembling like she'd rehearsed it. "This is a family misunderstanding." My dad chimed in with a deep sigh, telling the court I'd always been sensitive. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, because it was pathetic. They weren't denying what they did. They were just hoping their titles, Mom, Dad, would outweigh the facts. But facts don't bend, not in front of a judge. And my lawyer was ready. She stood calmly, voice firm but controlled, and laid everything out. The forged signatures, the call logs from their phones to the bank, the IP address used to submit the loan application, even a forensic analyst's report confirming the handwriting wasn't mine. I watched their faces as the truth came out piece by piece. And for once, they had nothing to say. My sister tried to play dumb. When they called her to the stand, she shrugged through every question. Claimed she didn't know where the money came from. Said the car was a gift. She even acted surprised when they showed her the screenshots of her social media post, the one where she bragged about finally getting what she deserves. She blinked, tilted her head, like maybe we were all imagining it. But the judge didn't blink, and neither did I. My lawyer didn't rush. She let the silence fill the room after every answer, let the weight of the truth hang in the air. I sat there, still, watching the people who raised me unravel in front of strangers. There was a moment, brief but real, where I thought I saw something like shame flicker across my mother's face. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by the same blank look she gave me the day I confronted them, like she couldn't believe I'd actually follow through. When closing arguments began, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't hoping they'd cry or beg or even apologize. I just wanted recognition. I wanted it on paper. I wanted someone with authority to say, "This happened to you." And it wasn't okay. And when the judge began to speak, I held my breath, not out of fear, but because I knew I'd never forget the words that were about to follow. The judge's voice was steady, unemotional, but every word hit like thunder. He listed the evidence point by point, a clear pattern of intentional fraud, breach of trust, abuse of personal information. Then came the ruling. My sister was legally responsible for repaying the loan, and both of my parents were to face criminal penalties for their roles in the identity theft. No warnings, no slaps on the wrist, just consequences, real ones. I didn't cry. I thought I might, but there was no rush of relief, no movie scene catharsis. What I felt was cleaner than that. Closure, like someone had finally pulled the last stitch on a wound that refused to heal. As we left the courtroom, they didn't look at me. Not my dad, not my mom, not even her. And that silence, that beautiful, vacant silence, was louder than any apology they never gave me. Outside the courthouse, I looked down at my hands. No more folders, no more evidence, no more shaking. Just me. Whole, untangled. And for the first time in years, I wasn't carrying their secrets. I wasn't covering for them. I wasn't saving anyone. I was finally free to start thinking about what came next. I always thought changing your name was just paperwork, something people did when they got married or divorced. I never imagined I'd be sitting in a government office, filling out forms to untangle myself from the people who gave me that name in the first place. But as I signed the last document, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Not the kind that comes with escape, but the kind that comes with reclaiming something that was always mine. Walking out of that building, I said my new last name out loud, quietly, like a test drive. It felt strange at first, unfamiliar on my tongue. But then somehow it felt right, like a name I'd earned, a name I'd chosen, not inherited, a clean slate. That old name had been dragged through lies, through debt, through betrayal. But this one was mine, untouched, undiluted. It didn't carry the weight of their choices. I packed up what I needed and left the city within a week. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. No goodbye dinners, no dramatic exits, just one suitcase, one signed lease, and a new mailing address. The place I moved to wasn't glamorous, but it was quiet, peaceful. My credit had been restored, my records were clean again, and more importantly, my conscience was clear. I was no longer the woman holding the family together. I was the woman who walked away from the wreckage and built something better. Starting over wasn't some grand cinematic moment. It was small, subtle, like learning how to breathe differently. I'd go to the grocery store and hear them call my new name over the intercom. And every time I smiled. Not because it was pretty or special, but because it wasn't theirs. Every signature I wrote, every form I filled out, was a tiny act of defiance. A reminder, I chose this. They don't get to rewrite me again. I got a new job in a little design firm, nothing flashy, but it gave me space to create, to think, to finally just be. I started drinking my coffee slower, took long walks with no destination, let silence fill my apartment without reaching for background noise, and in those quiet, ordinary moments, I found pieces of myself I didn't know I'd lost. Not the daughter, not the fixer, not the responsible one, just Jade, or rather, the woman who used to be Jade. The pain didn't disappear. Some nights, it crept back in. That dull ache of betrayal, the disbelief that the people who raised me could also be the ones to harm me most. But the difference now was, I didn't drown in it. I let it pass. I'd write it down, burn the page, and go on. I wasn't trying to erase the past. I was learning how to live without letting it define me. On my sister's birthday, I mailed her a package. No return address, no note, just a manila envelope sealed tight. Inside was every page of that cursed loan agreement, the original paperwork they used to steal my name. But this time, stamped across the front in bold red ink, paid in full. I imagined her opening it, maybe alone, maybe still pretending none of it was her fault. But I didn't send it for her. I sent it for me. To close the loop. That was the last thread. The final tie cut. No more texts. No more updates from mutual friends. I blocked them all. Changed my number. Changed my locks. Changed my life. People talk about forgiveness like it's this gentle thing, this necessary step. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. Sometimes it's about letting yourself go. Free from the need to understand or fix or carry someone else's guilt. They took my name and turned it into a liability. But in the end, I turned their theft into my liberation. They lost access to me, to my future, to everything they once took for granted. And I gained something better. Not just a new name, a new story, one that belongs entirely to me.